That's right, and here's the video right here. It is from inside the jail, and it has key interviews with witnesses who say they saw Jennifer Myers suffering for several days and was never taken to the hospital. Jenny Myers gets out of a police car in handcuffs and is escorted into the Macomb County Jail. The 37-year-old mother is patted down and ordered to put on a beige inmate outfit. She is not here for murder or assault, not even robbery. She's here for non-payment of child support, a judge saying pay $500 or spend 30 days in jail. This was the scene 12 days later, just after cellmates found the young mother dead in her cell.
We got her check her pulse. She went like this. She's like, she's ice cold. And we knew right then, you know, she was gone.
The exclusive jail video obtained by the defender shows reaction from inmates immediately following the discovery. And it shows her body being brought out on a stretcher in a body bag. Jennifer Myers wasn't murdered. She didn't commit suicide or overdose. She died from a virus slowly moving through her body. Neither the Sheriff's Department guards nor the privately contracted medical staff took her to a hospital.
The minute I touched her, she felt like she was in a meat freezer.
These two women were in the Macomb County Jail at the same time. We're not showing their faces or using their names. Jenny Myers' death occurred July 7, 2013. These video statements were just released as part of a civil lawsuit filed by attorney Robert Ieri.
And obviously when somebody comes into the jail, the punishment is being there. The punishment isn't to die.
He claims in a federal lawsuit that jail guards and medical staff at the Macomb County Jail failed to see what was obvious to other inmates.
And it looked like she had just got out of the shower. She was sweating so bad.
The inmates say they put wet towels on Myers' body, trying to cool her down. They say the illness was not sudden. She was becoming increasingly ill each day of her incarceration.
Nobody ever came in to check on her to see if she was okay. She wasn't eating, she wasn't drinking.
In her final 3 days of life, Jenny was too sick to get off her cot at mealtime.
She was literally laying in bed, cuddled up like this, you know, like not even able to move, so.
How many hours a day would she be like that?
All day.
In jail, requests for medical attention are called kites. Inmates say they were ignored.
She was kiting all the time, and the nurses would not do nothing about it. She says, you're going to give it to midnight staff and morning staff. I can't do nothing about it.
If Myers was evaluated, she was not determined sick enough to go to the hospital.
The nurses aren't doing crap about it. The officers, don't give her time of day.
Local 4 medical expert Dr. Frank McGeorge is an expert in in-depth custody cases. He studied the death certificate and autopsy report. Her official cause of death, acute sepsis. McGeorge says the signs of illness and foul smell should have warranted an in-depth exam by jail medical staff and a trip to the hospital.
To leave them in jail with an infection that ultimately leads to their death is just about the same as putting them to death.
Witnesses say in addition to sweating profusely and not being able to get out of bed, Jenny Myers had a horrible smell.
People were like, you gotta shower, you stink, like we can't take it no more.
If she were anywhere in the normal world outside of jail, she would have taken herself to the hospital or to an emergency room.
They either did not notice or did not realize how sick she was. In Myers' final hours, she was alone in her cell, too sick to go to mealtime. When her cellmates returned, they found her dead.
I was like, we gotta check her pulse, went up, and she was cold.
She'd been begging for help. They didn't do shit about it.
Jenny Myers went to jail because she was behind on her child support payments and could not come up with $500 cash. It turned out to be a death sentence. And tonight, the Macomb County Sheriff says he cannot comment on Jennifer Myers' death because it is an open and active litigation. This is the same jail where David Stojewski died in 2014. In that case, a video showed Stojewski suffering terribly before dying on the floor from prescription medication withdrawal. The feds conducted a lengthy investigation and found no criminal wrongdoing by jail or medical staff in that case. Civil lawsuits are underway in both deaths, and we will continue to follow those and bring you the latest on them. Kevin Dietz, Defenders. Yeah, this all started with an article in Bridge magazine that was questioning Sharon McPhail. Is she certified to teach the kids here at Detroit Community Schools or to be their superintendent? And it questioned the people she was hiring. Well, Sharon McPhail called the story a hit piece. She says things are getting better here, not worse, and she invited us in to take a look. We begin with educating kids in a poor neighborhood. In Brightmoor, gunshots are heard as often as school bells. On Monday mornings, kids can be a handful because they've not had a mouthful of food all weekend. Just to get to school, you have to pass abandoned houses where schoolgirls have been raped. Drugs are devoured and guns are hidden by young killers who think nothing of taking lives.
You got to keep the drugs away from them. You got to keep them in activity. That's what you have to do to keep these kids out of trouble, because these bullets that's flying.
The priority here is staying alive, not making sure homework is done. Historically, dropout rates are high, literacy rates low, and the cycle of poverty keeps rolling along. We went to Brightmoor on Detroit's west side. What we found is some great kids with exceptional talents who want to learn.
I'm going to graduate college, and I want to do something successful with my life.
How important is education to that?
Education is so important in my life because not a lot of people in my family was able to finish school.
Who want to go to college and graduate.
I want to be a technical engineer, or MD.
As I talk with the parents of Brightmoor, they understand they play a key role.
I don't think half the parents even care. I have watched children go to the store at nighttime by themselves to get a loaf of bread for their parents, and they sitting at home drinking and getting high.
They have to come from home too. The parents have to get on, help out with homework.
Most Brightmoor schools have long been shut down and boarded up. There's only one high school here, and Sharon McPhail runs it. The controversial lawyer and city council member who once said Kwame Kilpatrick rigged her chair in an effort to electrocute her.
We're not a failing school. There are 184 failing schools in Michigan. We're not one of them. It was a failing school when I got here.
McPhail runs Detroit Community Schools, a K-12 charter school with 800 students. She's been here almost 4 years and suddenly finds herself in a controversy. The Department of Education is investigating the status of certification for school staff. She went to a class, then decided it was a waste of time. She refuses to get certified, instead changing her title from superintendent to chief administrative officer.
No, it would be hurting the students if I went to that class, because that's 4 or 5 or 6 hours a week that I'm not doing stuff for them. So no, I don't need it.
McPhail makes $130,000 a year and pays a 6-figure salary to Bill Coleman to be her chief financial officer. Coleman was convicted of a felony as superintendent of a Texas school. Her dean of students is Sylvia James, who was thrown off the bench as a judge in Inkster following a misappropriated funds investigation. McPhail has a brother on the staff and a relative of Kwame Kilpatrick's too. She's proud of all this, not apologetic.
And a lot of people won't give them a chance, so what do I get for that? I get somebody that used to run school systems. Hello, Miss Tamika.
She walks the halls passing out compliments. She knows most every kid by name, and they support her. Graduation rates are up, but standardized test scores are abysmal. Only 2 students ever have passed all 4 sections of the ACT college entrance exam. So McPhail says things are getting better, but there's a lot of work still to do. We're right across the street from the school. It's a dumping ground. There's 3 boats in the backyard here. This is an abandoned building or abandoned house, and this one's not even boarded up. Again, this is right across the street from the school. This is not easy to bring teachers and administrators down here who want to work in this neighborhood. But is that an excuse for Sharon McPhail to be hiring friends and family and even people with a criminal past? What's best for these kids? How do they get an education? How do they get to college? We're going to dig into that tomorrow at 5 on Local 4. Kevin Dietz, Defenders.
By now, you've no doubt heard the story of white boy Rick, locked up 28 years ago at the age of 17 for selling drugs and still behind bars today.
Well, Defender Kevin Dietz flew to New York to meet with one of the country's brightest legal minds to see if he could figure out why Rick Wershey is still in prison.
This is the Klaus von Bülow case that I was the appellate lawyer, and you don't get too many cases where the reversal of the conviction makes the front page of the New York Times.
Attorney Alan Dershowitz has an office full of memories from the big cases: O.J. Simpson, Mike Tyson, Patty Hearst, Jim Baker. He has a letter President Clinton sent him in his final days of office.
And had 2 young people on the same page, a young guy named Bill Clinton and a young guy named Alan Dershowitz.
We went to New York City, the Big Apple, to talk to one of the biggest legal minds in America about Michigan's longest-serving nonviolent juvenile offender, white boy Rick Wershey. Dershowitz examined the court pleadings and says it doesn't add up. He can't see any reason Rick Wershey should still be behind bars.
This is a terrible, terrible injustice.
Yes, Wershey sold cocaine, but he was 17 years old. He has no record of violence. Dershowitz says Michigan is treating him worse than a killer.
The idea that he's being kept in jail because of something they know but won't share with him or the general public is completely antagonistic to American democratic principles.
Remember, Wershey was one of the best police informants of all time in the state of Michigan, helping federal officials put dozens of bad guys away, including dirty cops and former Mayor Coleman Young's brother-in-law and niece. Wershey was promised his cooperation would earn him favor for release. Then, the feds double-crossed him and said he should stay behind bars.
It's very tough to be an informer. You're risking your life when you inform against tough people for the government.
Dershowitz thinks Wershey should sue the government for breach of contract.
When you're an informer, that's a job, and promises are made. Those promises should be enforceable.
Some say Wershey deserves to be where he is, especially because he screwed up in prison by getting caught up in a car theft ring. Dershowitz says that was minor and has nothing to do with this outrageously long incarceration.
Parole boards look for any excuse to do nothing, and this conviction while in prison provides the perfect excuse for doing nothing.
Last summer, complaints came in of huge tow bills from people who claimed they were parking legitimately. So we parked our car in the apartment complex across the street from Detroit Receiving Hospital and headed to the office for a visitor's parking pass. Before we got back, a tow truck was ready to hook and take our car. How'd they do it so fast? Spotters, hiding in the lot, paid by the tow company to call on cars without a pass.
You just can't just tow any truck you want out of here.
The company, Gotch & Sons, told us they were hired by the complex to keep spots open for residents. After our story, the company agreed to try harder not to tow people visiting or on legitimate business.
And they told me once I stepped foot off of the property that they had the authority to tow my vehicle.
Fast forward to today. Louis Calhoun is a two-time Bronze Star Vietnam veteran who has worked 2 decades in private security. He says he came to visit a friend at the apartments, but she was in the hospital. He put a visitor's pass in his car and went across the street to see her. His car was towed, even with a visitor's pass. The bill, $430.
When I came back, my vehicle was gone. The pass says visitor pass for medical center courts. And I was visiting someone who lived there.
Tracy Gregory says her daughter was having a medical emergency, drove herself to the hospital and parked in the apartments. Her car was towed. The bill, $505.
A doctor and a nurse ran out to try and stop them from towing her car.
When death calls, a morgue investigator answers. It's their job to examine the body, to get up close and personal with those who have just taken their last breath.
Our main focus is usually the body, the positioning of the body.
It's important because what morgue investigators see in the first few moments can help determine if the death was an accident, a murder, or natural causes.
It could be a drug overdose, could be a suicide, could be a shooting.
Day and night, they race to the scene. Investigator Keith Batchelor of the Oakland County Medical Examiner's Office takes me along as he talks to witnesses.
Pick up one brother right here.
Looks for clues.
And you last seen him alive at 9 o'clock last night?
Examines the bodies for blood, rigor mortis, lividity. A call comes in. A man around 40 years old is found dead in his work truck.
They got a deceased person in the van behind the office max here.
There are no witnesses, so it's up to the investigators to find the clues that tell the story. Was he moved here as part of foul play? Did he pull over because he was having a medical emergency?
Any evidence that might be around the body, which could be prescription bottles or anything that might have some correlation with the cause of death.
They can usually quickly determine if it's likely a suicide, an overdose, a heart attack, or a murder. They work closely with police if foul play is suspected. A call comes in. It's a holiday, but death takes no days off. Morgue investigator Keith Batchelor makes the scene. A busy one with lots of family.
Keith Batchelor with the medical examiner's office. Are you Lawrence? Yes. Yeah, it's very sorry for the loss.
The family here is helpful, giving up key information that will help determine the cause of death. That's not always the case. Sometimes family alter the scene, hide evidence, move the body.
Now to our Defenders special series, True Blue, spotlighting what life is really like for the Metro Detroit police officers sworn to serve and protect us.
A local pastor is doing what many thought couldn't happen, putting officers and angry residents in the same room, encouraging both sides to talk through their differences. Defender Kevin Dietz following this story today. Simple idea, but such a complex issue, Kevin.
Yeah, it really is. And those in attendance were not holding back, some saying shocking statements that made many in law enforcement cringe. Bishop Hugh Daniel Smith wanted police to hear directly from those so passionate and angry about police shootings of unarmed African Americans. So he invited police chiefs and pastors, cops and citizens to his church for a no-holds-barred debate about police bias, intended or unintended, against African Americans.
There's a dis-ease in our community, and we cannot heal unless we're willing to be honest and not defensive.
Stories quickly emerging about young black men getting pulled over, arrested, even shot. Police explaining how they train, new diversity efforts, and their own concern for safety. It wasn't always pleasant, and it peaked with Dr. M. Tyrone Cushman of United Ministries International.
I know how to stop white policemen from killing black men and boys.
Explaining how he once told his congregation he had a plan that would stop racist cops.
For every black young man that is unarmed and is killed by a white policeman, we will kill 2 white policemen.
He acknowledged it's not something law enforcement and the community want to hear, and he's not telling anyone to go out and do it, just that it would work. There's been a lot of negative talk about police lately, with new videos popping up questioning their integrity. Local officers tell me they feel vilified by the actions of a few, and that it takes a toll on them emotionally as they protect and serve.
Callers are reporting problems with traffic cutting through private property to avoid construction on corporate near Crooks.
They put their lives on the line to protect ours, but these days, police say their public image has gone from hero to zero. They say it's unfair and making the career they chose tougher, more dangerous, and less fulfilling.
For me, it's kind of heartbreaking because most people who choose a life of law enforcement genuinely have a sense of love in their heart that want to see things better in the community.
We're here to help the people. We really are. We're not here to hurt anyone. We're not here to ruin anybody's life.
Greg Stopczynski is a white cop in the suburbs. Melanie Malone is a black cop in the city. Both bleed blue. They love being cops, but struggle with the image problem police are now facing.
I put my life out there for you and yours. I don't have to, but I choose to. So if nothing else, I think I deserve at least a little bit of respect. 11-4, I'm out.
We drove the beat with local cops to see how they're doing. It's been a brutal time lately to be in law enforcement.
Unarmed African American
videos pop up weekly on the news and internet showing police officers allegedly shooting unarmed citizens. Cops tell us it makes them look bad.
We're being judged by 5 or 10 seconds. No one sees what happens before that or after that.
The allegations are troubling that the director of the DMC is secretly using codes to talk about African American employees and potential hires. The Detroit Medical Center is one of our city's jewels, a 150-year legacy with multiple hospitals, including Children's, Receiving, and Harper. Over 12,000 employees, many considered among the country's best. But today, there are ugly allegations of racism in the security division. They come from a whistleblower who is white and has worked at the DMC for over 20 years.
I teach my family not to discriminate. If I'm not standing up, who am I?
She has asked us not to identify her in this story, but she has come forward to the attorney who filed this lawsuit in Wayne County.
He proceeded and showed me on a piece of paper what the codes were and what the meanings were of the codes.
Allegations that Richard McCarty, the head of security at DMC, uses a secret numbering code to differentiate white and black applicants and employees. Whites were secretly referred to as 03, blacks as 04.
He wrote the number 3 on a piece of paper, and then he turned it 90 degrees, and he said, see, that's the W for white. And then he wrote a 4, flipped it upside down, and showed me how it represents a B for black.
Abused by a priest as children, they now say it's time to speak up, to speak out, so that this never happens again.
He knelt beside the bed I was in. He had a bed, held my hand, said the Lord's Prayer, and then climbed in bed with me. Had his way with me.
They are being called heroes in a horrific case of abuse.
For me, I was a sophomore. I was 15 at the time. Started on the wrestling team. He was the wrestling coach.
6 victims coming forward to face the priest that abused them as children.
I was having trouble fighting him off. He's a strong guy. So I had the incident finally where he stuck his hands down my pants, and I was able to fight him off and get out of his office.
Speaking up to make sure a priest stays behind bars.
Pinned me up against the wall, put his forearm to my throat, and threatened my family, threatened me, threatened to kill my family, my mom and dad, if I spoke up.
Telling stories of abuse from the past to shed light on this horrible problem and expose the truth.
I left numb shock and witnessed that abuse, this rape scene, from outside of my body looking down.
Father James Rapp was a priest and wrestling coach at Michigan's Jackson Lumen Christi High School from 1980 to 1986. He had moved around the country over the years: Philly, New York, Illinois, Utah. In Oklahoma, he picked up a molestation charge that sent him to prison.